Maat, Ankh, and Djed. It's going to be my new one, What's Happening, Hotel Peace World. My name is Ausar. This is Afrosynthesis, and welcome back to the channel. For those who are attending for the first time, again, my name is Ausar, short for Ahasa and Mantu Jadu, the warrior son of Mantu. The pillar is our clan name, right? So when I say Ankh and Djed, that means life and stability, right? Djed is the pillar. It's about stability. It's about having an erectness about you, being upright in how you move in your presence. And so DJED, the Djed pillar, Ankh and Djed. Go do some research on the Djed pillar. It's a very, very important, very instrumental to our understanding physically, mentally, and spiritually on how we're supposed to, move, act, and be in this world. If you are, of course, returning on this journey, this is episode 3. I appreciate your trust. I appreciate your investment in yourself and in this, which is much greater than I. Right? This is a we thing. This is a us thing. This is a space where we, like I said, we can convene away from them. Right? Who is them? That's for you to decide, right? Because we're all in different groups, but we do know that them is those who are opposed to our being and our becoming. And so today we're going to round out this conversation we've been having with Ausar. In truth, we've been dealing with Ausar for 3 weeks because this whole show, this whole episode, this whole program is a part of my journey of pulling myself back together, which essentially deals with Ausar. But we've really been dealing with Ausar these last 2 weeks pretty heavily. And so, as we said in week 1, this was about Ankh and Maat. It was about living in Maat, living in harmony. And in episode 2 was about pulling ourselves back together, right? I think we said recognizing whether things are falling apart, or things are falling back into place. And so this week we're going to round that out by talking about sacred spaces and how we can really access them. And so this is really this week is really stemming from a message from Hemet Neter and Bara Ma'at during our communion. For those who don't know, I am a part of the Temple of Anu. It's an Afro-Kemetic, meaning it's an ancient Egyptian Black spiritual temple in New Jersey. And the Temple of Anu is doing incredible work bringing the ancient wisdom of our ancestors into the living in modern times, right? It's from the ancient legacy to the living legacy is what we're doing here. We are constructing, we are recreating, we are redefining, we are bringing back to life that which has been covered. And so this past week's communion, right, that's what our Sunday message is called. It's when the community gathers, we have communion together, right? We share good word. Listening to good speech allows us to speak good speech, right? If your child is repeating things and you're like, where you learn that from? Obviously they heard it, so they're repeating it, right? And so in ancient Egypt, right, Medu Neter is divine conversation, as we spoke in Kemet. And for us to have a divine conversation, that means I need to be listening to something divine, and then I need to be speaking in reciprocity with the same type of, right, divinity, right? And so this past week's good word, you've heard that phrase before, divine speech. This last week's good word was about the idea of loss, right? So when we talk about Ausar was dismembered. He was separated. He was fragmented into 14 pieces. And Auset and Nebuchadnezzar went on a journey of mentally, right, but also physically remembering Ausar back together. And what's important about that is Hemet during our communion spoke about the reality that in many ways, right, that Ausar's loss of himself was more of a catalyst, right? What does it mean? A catalyst sounds like catapult, but actually if you look at the etymology of catalyst, it means to dissolve, right? And so sometimes we need things to be dissolved. We need things to be removed so that we can we can work with it differently, right? When something's being dissolved, it's being broken down. And so you can literally see that when you are being, right, if you're being dismembered, if you're being pulled apart, and if you're being pulled in multiple directions, excuse me, sorry about that, I don't know about, you're being pulled in multiple directions, it's almost as if you're being dissolved in a way. You're disoriented. And so something that I needed to hear, or something that was moved on my spirit during this conversation of loss and understanding it sometimes, and more often not, switching your perspective as a catalyst, is that it really provides a space for us to do that which we weren't doing, that which we wanted to do but didn't have maybe the time, or whatever it might be, right? In a lot of ways, loss is a catalyst. And so in the actual story of Ausar, right, he 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 lost his way, and in losing his way, by slipping, right, when he fell into bed with Nebuchadnezzar, by losing his way, he lost himself. And so I've been in a journey of remembering the things that help me find my way, that keep me along my way. And one of those things is yoga. My sister, naturally educating on social platforms, follow her on YouTube, follow her on Instagram. Beautiful woman. Her real name is Andrea. And she one day, while teaching a yoga class, said something that's really stuck with me. In yoga, they tell you that you need to stay on your own mat, right? Like, I might not be able to stretch as far, as deep, whatever, as you. However, my goal is to progress in my development and my stretching, my flexibility, my mindfulness practice. And that doesn't involve me being on your mat and looking at what you're doing. And so, not staying on your mat, that's important. But she said during practice, she's like, take up space in the places that you want to be. And that's just resonated with me so deep, because more than anything, that's a commandment, right? What does it mean to command something? It means to make the thing so, right? When in Kemet, we have three divinities, three Neteru that we speak of, that give us this gift of commanding. That's Sia, Hu, and Hekau. I'll say that again. Sia, Sia, Hu, Hu or HW, and then Hekau, Hekau is how I spell it. Many different spellings, because in Kemet, the vowels are actually not, I don't want to say not important, but it's more of a cultural speaking thing than it is like the architecture and the pillar of the word, right? Like the consonants are. And so when you have Sia is clarity. When you have clarity of mind, you don't just have your perception, which is seeing the way that you see it, but you also have perspective, which means you can see and understand how the whole is looking at that as well, right? Imagine like a soccer ball or a disco ball. You can be the part and you can be the whole. And so when you have Sia, when you have clarity, you can see from multiple angles and perspective. And that's powerful, because that allows your Hu, your authoritative utterance, is what we would call Hu, right? It sounds like a commandment, but we say authoritative utterance. So that's the translation that Baba Jedi Shimshu Jehudi, or Baba Jacob Carruthers, right? That's how he translates Hu. And when you have Hu, when you have an authoritative utterance, that means that you used your tongue to literally speak, aka vibrate, and bring that frequency forward. And so once it's put out into the atmosphere, if it's in Maat, if it's in harmony, then what comes next is the universe, right? Neter conspires with you to bring that into existence. And so with Sia, with clarity, with Hu, with authoritative utterances, we get the power of Hekau, which is going to be, right, a magic. It's going to be it is the confirmation from Neter that this can come into being. It might not look like we want it to look, but right, if 2 plus 2 is in Ma'at and we get 4, It just might, that 4 might look a little different. And so I say this because a lot of times we disrespect our catalysts. We disrespect our space when we define it or we look at it as something different, right? When I This was back maybe like 4 months ago now, my car broke down, and I was upset about it because when I feel like whenever you're on top, whenever you're moving and you're in a good space, something happens with the car specifically, right? Your ability to move, your transportation. And so for the first couple of days that my transmission was out, I was, and by days I really want to say 24 to 48 hours. Yeah, a couple of days, 24 to 36 hours maybe. I was I was perceiving it from my human, right? I was having a human experience about it. Like, yo, I'm up, have money saved. Why is my car breaking down right now? Like, that was the last thing I needed. Or so I thought, right? But then, after meditating, putting some peppermint oil in my hands, rubbing it together to really activate, taking a moment just to sit and breathe and get back still, right? Didn't have a car, so I was much more still than before. I realized, like, yo, this is a blessing. Firstly, I have the thousands of dollars it took to get the transmission fixed. My car is paid off, so I didn't want another bill. I didn't want to entertain shopping and looking for a new vehicle. And a new transmission will get you another 120,000 miles. So in that case, this is a brand new car. Let me just go ahead and do this, right? So when I got in my divine state of mind, I realized like I hadn't lost my car, right? Because check this out: in September and October in St. Louis, the weather is like the weather is beautiful, and so I spent a lot more time taking the Nike Express. Like I was walking everywhere. I got back to riding my bike, and for those who know me off the internet, I love riding my bike. I even got the comment once while I was out. It's like, Wes, it's so nice to see you like pulling up on your bike. It just feels right. And before I was speaking about riding my bike as if it was a relic of the past because I hadn't done it in so long, right? When I had my car, or during this time when I was in the space when I didn't have my car, I realized that I used to make a lot of last minute decisions, right? It's like, oh, you know what? Let me go do this. Hop in the car and just drive there. But in the 2 weeks where I was getting my car fixed, I had to be much more intentional about my actions, right? If I have to walk 4 miles there, or I got to bike 20 to 30 minutes to get there, you're not just going to decide to do it. You may, but you at least thought one more time, right? I didn't just get up and I was down the street in a minute or two. I I got to slow down. I got to be still. I got to be intentional with my thoughts, with my movements, with my actions. And a few years ago, I would have been very upset about not being able to go to the store quickly or having to DoorDash my groceries because I didn't want to ride on the bike and carry them all. But what I realized, in my divine state of mind is Netzer moved my car out the way so that I could have myself back, right? I got a peace of mind to just be still. I got to walk around Forest Park. I got to walk around the St. Louis Arch grounds with the sun, right, shining on my body, shining on my temple, helping light me up, right? I'm not in a car disconnected from the ground with the rubber wheels. That's way harder than I thought. Sheesh. I didn't have to deal with not getting the sun because my car doesn't have a sunroof, or even having a sunroof and having the sun filtered in. No, I was getting direct with source again, and realized, like I said, Netzer didn't move the car. Netzer gave me myself back. And in having myself back, I was able to have a more healthy and balanced relationship with my vehicle once it came back. And so getting back to Ausar, right? Ausar had to be remembered together. And once he became remembered together, he became the king of what they call, and I said they, right? Because we got to do translations now. They call it the underworld. That's not the case. If you close your eyes, right, Ausar became the king of the inner world. Right? When you pass, when you transition, it is Ausar who is going to be the king of that place which you go to next. Right? That's not under you, just like heaven's not above you. They say as above, so below. As within, so without. If space is above, can I ask what is below us? Because if Earth is a sphere floating in space, that means space is also under us, right? As above, so below. That doesn't mean heaven's up there and hell is down there. That means heaven and hell is this. As within, so without. Less often said, but just as crucial, right? Everything that's happening outside of us, if I close my eyes, is also happening within us. Elon Musk is, and a lot of these white billionaires, they are trying to literally run and fly to space as if I can't and we can't close our eyes and journey through the infinite and the endlessness that already exists right within. And where this is important is because, right, like I realized in the loss of my car how many things I was dealing with that was without me versus within me, right? I'm making space for my friends' and family's conversation, their dreams, their thoughts, their fears. I'm making space for this movie, right? And even just moving away from the car, I'm making space for that TV show, for this dinner. I'm making space for right so many things. If you have a significant other, you got to multiply that by two. And I mean, if you on your, I won't say people's names. If you on your poly, right? If you're on your polyamorous type living, you might have to. I'm an athlete. You might have to do that, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, right? You got to double, triple, quadruple them numbers depending on what your situation is. And so, the beautiful part about, again, how Hamet said in our community, let's reframe loss as a catalyst, right? As something that helps us towards our next step in our iteration, in our evolution, in our development, our being and becoming, right? If you make space for all these things, how often do you then have space for yourself, right? After I decompress, after I process and filter through all the things that in the spaces and the things that I've took in for friends, family, whatever, I'm exhausted to deal with myself. And that's not balance. That's not living in my aunt, because you have to also go back to source and you got to make space for that. I was telling somebody last week, like, I realized in college I was a people person because that provided a platform for me to have less time and space to deal with myself. Right? If my head is separated too far from my neck or my shoulders, right? I'm not going to be able to live. If my arms are separated too far apart from my shoulders, my torso, same with my legs from my pelvis or my body, I will be inoperable, right? I'm not going to be able to operate to my full capacity. I won't be living because I'm going to be too far separated, right? And so sometimes we don't really make space for others. We're just literally pulling ourselves apart. And so I think I say this to say, let's reframe things, right? When Asar was remembered back together, we realized that it was actually his separation via Satesh was actually, right, a catalyst. It was a clearing of space so that we can pull things back into the spaces that they need to be, into the places that they need to be, so that we can grow and so that we can develop, so that we can then ascend to be king or queen of whatever our next step is, right? And I say that to say, when we meditate, we get to take up space in one of the places we most belong, which is within ourselves, right? I'm closing my eyes because right now I'm in infinity. I can see an endlessness, right? But when I meditate, I can't always stay in this space as long as I want to. Right? When I first started, just count your breath. 1, when you breathe in. 2, when you breathe out. See how far you can go, right? Before your mind slips. Is that number 10? Is that number 20? Is that number 30? Is that number 5 seconds? It doesn't matter. But know that the more you practice, right, the greater you can expand that infiniteness, right? Like, we know infinity exists. I have never, can guarantee you, and probably never will, count to infinity. But I can continually grow in how far and how close I get to it. And so may this message this week about creating sacred space really be a reminder for you all to sit down, close your eyes, be still, breathe, and realize you don't have to move to meet infinity. You don't have to, make or buy a special calendar in order to learn how to meditate. You just need to close your eyes, be still, and make room for yourself. And as you make room for yourself, what you'll actually realize is that you'll pull yourself back together. You'll see what parts of you are scattered. You'll sit still enough to even learn where those scattered parts are, right? I know a lot of people, my generation, of course, we grew up with Drake. He says, someone told me I fell off. Ooh, I needed that. And they want to see me pick back, well, where I leave it at, yeah? Slow down, sit still, close your eyes, breathe, and see where you left yourself at, right? See where you need to pull yourself back together. But more importantly, see that the things that you have lost, whether that's a person, whether that's a car, an item, whether it's a job, see that you haven't actually lost anything, but God, Netzer, is giving you space to have yourself back. It's giving you time to reallocate towards a project that you've been wanting to do for a long time. Netzer is giving you the energy that you need to move forward in the next step in your evolution, in your being, in your becoming. And so I appreciate you all for being here, like I said, for trusting me, for listening to yourself and listening to us in this space here. And so let's move forward, right? Let's tap into our Ausar faculty. Let's pull ourselves together so that we can be clear, we can have Sia, so that we can begin to have more authority in our utterances and our speaking, so that we can move with who. Therefore, we can have Hekau, and we can bring that which we want into existence. And so, as always, my name is Ahasa. This is Afrosynthesis, and I will see you next week. So it is, and so shall it be.